I caught my husband with my daughter's fiancé before the wedding. I was going to confront him, but my daughter stopped me. On the morning vows were due, truth split my house in two. The sun hadn't even cleared the Seattle skyline when I learned what love looks like, when it rots in silence. I was in the hallway, still holding the satin ribbon meant for my daughter's bouquet, when I saw my husband's hands on him, the man who was supposed to marry our daughter in a few hours. My breath caught somewhere between disbelief and rage. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misread the scene. That the laughter, the closeness, the touch meant nothing. But it meant everything. I reached for the door, ready to tear the moment apart, ready to end 26 years of trust with one scream, when a soft voice behind me stopped the world cold. "Mom," my daughter whispered, her face pale but steady. I already knew, and it's worse than you think. That's the moment everything broke. And the moment I realized secrets don't just destroy families, they breed them. In the next few minutes, you'll hear everything. How a mother's instinct turned into evidence, how my daughter chose patience over panic, and how together, we exposed the truth at an altar filled with flowers and lies. You'll learn how I discovered my husband Thomas wasn't mentoring my daughter's fiancé. He was romancing him. Why my daughter Ava stopped me from storming in that morning and whispered a plan instead. Who helped us gather proof without giving away our suspicion, and what really happened when we let the truth play out in front of 300 wedding guests. This isn't just a story about betrayal, it's about control, silence, and what happens when women decide to stop pretending. So before I take you back to that morning, do me one small favor. Drop your city in the comments and let me know where you're listening from. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Because by the end of this story, you'll understand why sometimes the quietest voice in the room is the one that carries the loudest truth. I woke at 4:57 a.m., 3 minutes before the alarm that said, "Wedding Day." The house in Queen Anne was quiet. Elliott Bay had that pale steel color it wears before sunrise. I brewed coffee and opened my laptop in the home office where I keep the books for Carter Co., the small CPA practice I run from home. Spreadsheets blurred. My mind kept skipping to ferry timetables. Guests were crossing to Bainbridge Island by noon. The ceremony at 4, reception at golden hour. We'd hung cafe lights along our back deck last night. I'd checked the bulbs twice. Thomas had teased me for fussing, kissed my forehead, said he and Ethan were finalizing the rehearsal playlist. The way he said Ethan's name, too soft, too careful, had already started to sandpaper my nerves. At 6:10, my daughter Ava padded into the office, sweatshirt, sleep-tossed bun, mug in both hands. She has my jaw, Thomas's smile, and a steadiness I envy. "You're up early," I said. "We've got a day to survive," she said with a brittle laugh. "You doing okay?" "I want it perfect for you," I said. "You picked the island. You picked the wildflowers. It's your day, baby." She traced a finger along my desk edge, then looked up. "Mom, do you think Ethan loves me the way I love him?" The question knocked the wind out of me. Ethan Reed, calm, clever, a startup ops lead in Fremont. He brought rhubarb pies from Ballard Market and knew how to get my fussy printer to behave. He and Thomas had bonded, at least that's how they described all the time they spent together after work, running routes, training for a 10K that never came. "Why?" I asked. Ava swallowed. "Little things. He's present, but not. He flinches when I say forever. He and Dad. They've been spending a lot of time alone. Dad says he's helping him negotiate a raise. Sometimes Ethan comes home smelling like Dad's cologne. Maybe they're just close," I said. The words tasted like chalk. She smiled without her eyes. "Maybe." Thomas appeared in the doorway, already in pressed slacks, crisp shirt. That watch I told him was too expensive. "My girls," he said brightly. Ava Bear, did you sleep? Renee, did you email the florist? Oh, Ethan's swinging by around 9. Something about place cards and the aisle runner. We'll handle it. My stomach tightened. We? Logistics, he said lightly. You've got a million other things. Ava's smile thinned. Thomas kissed my cheek, kissed Ava's hair, and left. I wish I could say I trusted my gut sooner. But when you've built 26 years with someone, you keep handing them the benefit of the doubt even after the benefit runs out. I had noticed the late returns, the mentoring texts that bloomed at midnight, the new gym membership that never scuffed his sneakers. I had noticed, and I had made excuses for both of us. At 8:47, a charcoal gray Tesla pulled to the curb. Ethan, blue button down, jaw tense. He walked in like he still belonged here. I'll be in the kitchen, I told myself, which was a lie. I circled to the side gate, crouched behind the rhododendrons outside the living room windows, the place where we had set up Christmas stockings and joked that Santa was late. Through the glass, I saw Thomas pour whiskey at 9:02 like it was celebratory, like they were the ones getting married. They stood too close. Thomas's hand hovered over Ethan's shoulder, landing and lifting like a moth. Ethan's shoulders sank with something like relief. He said something I couldn't hear. Thomas cupped his face, and then, clean and deliberate, their mouths found each other. The world narrowed to a ringing line. I felt 26 anniversaries buckle inside my ribs. I rose. I would tear the door off the hinges. I would say the words people only say when bridges are already ash. When a whisper caught my elbow. Mom, don't. Ava. On the upstairs landing, half in shadow, watching, she came down the stairs like a person walking through fire and opened the side door. Outside on the path, she kept her voice low. I already knew, she said, and it's worse than you think. Her hands shook, but her eyes were iron. I found messages last week. I thought it was about me, Ethan having doubts. It wasn't. He called Dad T. Dad called him E. They used our wedding as a deadline. A deadline for what? I asked, though I knew. To choose each other, she said flatly. She squeezed my forearm. Not yet, she said. Mom, please. We do this the right way or they'll tell us we imagined it. I looked through the glass again. Thomas brushed Ethan's hair back like he used to do to Ava before school. I felt something in me crack cleanly, without noise. Okay, I said. What's the plan? We didn't have to do it alone. My younger brother, Marcus, is a former King County detective who now runs a tiny PI firm out of a Pioneer Square office with creaky stairs and good coffee. He picks up my calls before the first ring. I'm in your neighborhood, he said. 15 minutes. We met him on the back deck. Ava's face was colorless. I handed Marcus my phone, my laptop, my life. Start with this, Ava said, and sent him a folder. Screenshots, audio, location pings. Ethan shares his Apple Calendar with me. He forgot to unshare it when he started deleting texts. Marcus scrolled with that unreadable expression cops learn so you don't read hope in their eyes. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. He had a battered Pelican case in his trunk. From it, he pulled a button-sized camera, a small audio recorder, and a portable drive. He wired the living room to catch clean sound if logistics continued. He installed a discreet dash cam in the Tesla the valet would park at the hotel that night. He asked if Thomas had used our home office printer recently. Yes. Great, he said. People forget printers keep copies. He imaged the hard drive. While Marcus worked, Ava and I sat at the kitchen table, not touching our coffee. We spoke in practicalities because naming the pain would have undone us. At 11:40, Ethan left. Thomas watched him from the window, then spun into host mode. The caterer arrived. My sister Lila stopped by with emergency bobby pins. I went through motions like a person who's seen stage directions but not the script. At 1:10, Marcus texted from the street. Got something. Don't react inside. I walked out to the sidewalk pretending to check the mailbox. He handed me headphones. A snippet. Thomas's voice, slurred with morning whiskey and a teenage kind of giddiness. You'll say the vows, he'll say the vows, and then we'll make our announcement at the reception. Forget it, I'm kidding. Just get through today for me, okay? For us. Ethan's whisper wrecked. I can't watch her cry, T. Marcus tucked the recorder away. That's enough to stop a ceremony, he said, but you'll get spin. If you want silence, you need a theater they can't climb out of. I've got theater, Ava said, and her jaw set in a shape I'd never seen on her. We have the slideshow screen for baby photos at the reception. We use it. We show messages. We play the audio. We put truth on speakers. Part of me flinched. Public humiliation is a bell you can't unring. But the other part, the part that had covered scraped knees and built dioramas and believed in a husband who was choosing the person our daughter loved, needed the bell. Then we collect one more thing, Marcus said. There's money here. There's always money. If Thomas is paying for hotels, gifts, a second phone, he's moving cash. Renee, you handle the books. Have you seen weird withdrawals? I thought of the new platinum card, the consulting dinners, the way home equity held a lower number last month than it should have. I swallowed. Printer images, I said. If he forged anything, the cash might still hold the page. Marcus nodded. Don't worry the legal pieces tonight. You'll get there. For now, enough truth to beat any story they try to sell. He put a small remote control in my palm. One button. He synced it to the reception screen's laptop. When you press this, whatever we load will play. You'll choose when. Ava looked at it the way a person looks at a handrail before walking onto ice. By 2, guests were crossing on the 2:10 ferry, scarves snapping in the wind, clutching little craft cocktails the planner had prepared for arrival. The venue, an old cedar-lined lodge tucked back from the water, smelled like lemon oil and peonies. Every detail Ava had chosen with care felt radioactive now, humming with the charge of what we were about to do. Thomas thrived in crowds. He moved table to table with that easy laugh I once followed into every room. He found me by the escort cards, slid his arm around my waist like a claim. You're radiant, he said. He pointed at the votives. See? I told you the mercury glass would pop. I watched the light flicker over his wedding band and felt nothing but a clean, sterile rage that made everything sharp. At 3:57, the quartet shifted from warm-up notes into the processional. Guests took their seats under string lights that swung in the island breeze. The officiant, a friend of Ava's from college, smiled benevolently from the arch Ava had covered in wild roses. The aisle runner was perfect. The world would have been perfect if the world had been kind. Ava stood with her maid of honor at the top of the aisle, bouquet white-knuckled in her hands. Ethan took his place beside the officiant, face composed in that way people practice in bathroom mirrors. I walked to the front row. Thomas sat beside me. We made it, he whispered, like we were a team that had completed something. The ceremony began. Words about love, words about fidelity, words I used to find beautiful. They sounded like ash now. Before we continue, the officiant said, if anyone knows a reason these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now or... I stood. The breath of 300 people stuttered in one shared chest. Thomas grabbed my wrist. Renee, sit. I pulled free. My voice came out steady, like I'd been practicing in my sleep. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I won't take long. I can't let my daughter marry under a lie. And I can't let my husband keep telling one. Mom, Ava said softly, her cue to me that we were still together in this. I lifted the remote Marcus had given me. The screen behind the arch brightened. For one ridiculous second, I saw the first slide of the baby photos, Ava in a daisy romper, and then the file Marcus had cued overrode it. On the speakers, clean as a confession, Thomas's voice. Just get through today for me, okay? For us. Ethan's whisper. I can't watch her cry, T. Thomas lurched to his feet. Out of context, he shouted. This is cruelty. Context? I said, and lifted my hand slightly. The next slide. A tight frame from our living room. Ethan and Thomas at 9:02 a.m. Exactly how I'd seen them. Their mouths, their hands. The intimacy that should have been behind their own closed door, not borrowed from mine. Gasps rippled like wind through tall grass. Chairs scraped. Ethan's face went gray. He turned toward Ava, who didn't flinch. I wanted you to choose me, Ava said, voice even. Not the lie that kept me safe. More images clicked past. Messages Ethan forgot to delete from his watch. Calendar invites labeled Mentor Sesh at the Four Seasons. Photos of the same whiskey bottle on the bookshelf refilling itself too quickly. Thomas looked at me. Truly looked. And I watched the man I'd built a life with be replaced by someone I didn't recognize. Smaller, meaner, already assembling a spiteful defense. There are adults here, he said desperately. Decency, Renee. Think of the families. I am, I said. I'm thinking of ours. He moved toward the AV table like he could disarm the truth. Marcus, in a waiter's black, stepped from the wings and simply shook his head. The officiant looked stricken. Guests murmured, then hushed, then murmured again. I thought of every time I'd chosen grace when fury was called for, and felt something inside me settle. A floor I could stand on. Ava turned to Ethan. Do you love my father? She asked. Not a hint of tremor. Ethan closed his eyes. I'm sorry, he said, the only honest thing he'd given her in months. I'm sorry. Ava nodded once. Then she handed the bouquet to her maid of honor, walked down the steps, threaded through the aisle to me, and took my hand. We're done here, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Thank you all for coming. And just like that, the ceremony ended not with a kiss, but with a mother and daughter walking out together, backs straight, silence parting before us like a tide. What happens after you pull a pin out of a grenade? First, the quiet inside the blast. Then the ringing. Then the pieces. Guests scattered into clusters. Some followed us, pressing hands to arms, saying small, useless things. Some stayed, hungry for secondhand smoke. A few tried to corner Thomas, but he vanished in that way cowards learn to vanish. Quick, eyes on exits. Ethan sat by the arch with his head in his hands. I didn't look back at either of them. In a side room, Ava and I sat with water we didn't drink. Marcus came in and set a small folder on the table. I imaged your home office printer, he said. There are copies of a HELOC draw with your signature and someone else's hand on it. Not legally certified, but the strokes don't match your tax forms. Also, a card statement with rooms charged to an LLC I can't tie to any real business. Just a P.O. box in South Lake Union. You will want a lawyer. I wanted a life, I said. But yes, a lawyer. Ava stared at the condensation on her glass. I'm not broken, she said aloud, almost testing the words for fit. I'm angry, but I'm not broken. Anger is clean, I said. We can build with clean. We went home. We took off gowns and updos and put on sweats. My sister Lila arrived with pho and a box of tissues and sat on the rug like we were kids again. At 1:03 a.m., my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. It was Ethan's mother, voice hoarse, asking if Ava was safe. She is, I said. But please don't minimize what happened by calling it complicated. It's not complicated, she said quietly. It's a sin. I didn't have an answer for that, so I said goodnight. Morning brought the stiff ache of the day after a car crash. The city kept moving, ferries, dogs, garbage trucks, without caring that we'd shattered. That, in a way, helped. I found a family attorney the following week. We filed for dissolution. Marcus's files, my bank reconciliations, and the printer cash built a pattern the judge didn't like. Unapproved debt draws in the months Ethan began to train, hotel charges tucked under consulting, cash withdrawals in amounts that never tripped our bank's fraud alarms, but added up to a number that made me sit down on the kitchen floor when I totaled it. Thomas tried 3 tactics in 3 weeks. Denial? Those audio files are deep fakes. Charm? Let's work this out quietly for Ava's sake. And finally, anger. You're going to ruin me. I learned the most effective response was none. Silence makes manipulators listen to themselves. Ava started therapy. She went twice a week. She also began waking early and running the stairs at Cary Park until her lungs burned and her hands stopped shaking. She cut off Ethan cleanly. When he texted, "I owe you a conversation," she replied, "You owed me truth. We're beyond owing." Then she blocked him and kept going. Neighbors gossiped. That's how neighborhoods metabolize shock. People brought casseroles and kept their eyes too soft. I started returning calls from clients with a professional voice I had to warm up like an instrument. Taxes, audits, payroll, mundane things that steadied me. Numbers add, lies multiply. Sometime in month 2, a letter arrived addressed to the Carters. The handwriting was careful, like someone practicing themselves into a new kind of bravery. It was from a boy named Micah. He introduced himself as Ethan's younger brother. He'd always looked up to Ethan. He wanted us to know Ethan was staying with him. He didn't ask forgiveness. He didn't downplay damage. He just wanted me to know he was keeping Ethan alive because he'd seen too many people in their neighborhood lose themselves when the life they built crashed. I sat with that letter for a long time. Complicated things can still be true. People who hurt you also bleed. By fall, the divorce was final. I kept the house and the business. Thomas kept the debt he'd made. Washington's community property laws don't care why. They care how much. But intent had a way of scenting the numbers. Ava didn't go back to her old job. She apprenticed with a floral designer on Capitol Hill, lost herself in peonies and hellebores and the discipline of making something beautiful stand upright. On a gray Tuesday, she came home smelling like eucalyptus and said, "Mom, I never actually loved weddings. I loved the work of arranging the living into something honest." I hugged her longer than she expected. "Me too," I said into her hair. Thomas asked to see me once, 6 months out. We met in a coffee shop with big windows. He looked older, emptier. Affairs age people faster than birthdays. "I'm sorry," he said. He had a speech, the kind people craft with therapists or mirrors. He wanted to explain his childhood. He wanted to apologize for the way he reached for admiration, wherever it glowed. He needed me to know he loved our daughter. He needed me to know he didn't plan to fall in love with a person he wasn't supposed to love. I listened. "You had choices," I said when he finished. "You chose secrecy and borrowed time. You could have told the truth before you touched anyone. You didn't." He blinked hard. "I don't know how to fix it." "You don't," I said quietly. "You accept the bill. You pay it by not asking me to hold your portion." He nodded, small, and left with his paper cup like a prop he'd forgotten to set down. Ethan wrote once, a brief email forwarded by Marcus so I could decide whether to read it. I did. He said he was in counseling. He said he didn't expect a response. He said Ava deserved better. He didn't ask to meet. It was the only thing he did right from beginning to end. A year after the non-wedding, Ava and I took the ferry back to Bainbridge with no outfits to ruin and no expectations to crush. We walked the shoreline. She skipped stones, the muscle memory of childhood. I asked if she wanted to talk about that day. "I want to talk about that morning," she said, then smiled. "You almost stormed the room like a hurricane. And then you didn't, because I asked." "You asked," I said. And I remembered that I didn't raise a child to be rescued from her own courage. We sat on a log and watched a sailboat tack across the bay. In my pocket, my phone vibrated. YouTube notified me of a comment on the short version of this story I'd shared months before. It said, "Thank you for saying it out loud. Out loud is how secrets die." What I learned, for anyone standing on the same threshold: you're not crazy. If your body keeps ringing alarms, listen. Love asks for proof when patterns don't add up. Document in daylight, screenshots, dates, places. Not to weaponize, but to anchor yourself to something sturdy when your history tries to gaslight you. Choose your theater. Private confrontations let liars pace the scene. Public ones stop the music. Neither is morally superior. One is often more effective. Let the right people in. My brother, my sister, a therapist. You do not need a stadium's worth of sympathy. You need a small, competent pit crew. Separate identity from event. I was a wife. Then I wasn't. I am still a mother, a sister, a business owner, a woman who can set a table that makes people breathe easier. Titles change. Gifts don't. Repair doesn't mean return. Forgiveness is a door you build for yourself, not a hallway back to them. The Queen Anne house doesn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It breathes again. The air smells like basil and lemon polish instead of tension and secrets. There are fewer photos on the mantle now, just the ones that survived the storm. Me holding baby Ava in the old park. The three of us at Mount Rainier long before the cracks began to show. The rest, the ones that hurt to look at, are packed away in a box in the attic. Not out of bitterness, but because peace needs space to grow. The printer hums from my office, faithful again, quietly spitting out invoices and tax reports instead of lies hidden in forged signatures. I never thought a simple sound could feel like closure. On Sundays, Ava stops by with flowers that didn't sell from her shop. Dahlias, ranunculus, lavender sprigs tied together with leftover ribbon. She says every flower deserves a home, even the ones nobody picked. Maybe we're like that too. Rescued leftovers, finding beauty after being passed over. We cook small meals now, comfort food, tomato soup, rosemary chicken, fresh bread that makes the whole house smell alive. We eat outside on the same deck where fairy lights still glow overhead. The same bulbs I once checked obsessively before the wedding that never happened. They still work, every single one of them. Maybe that's their quiet way of telling me I still do too. When the sky softens to lavender, we talk about the small victories that built the week. I tell her about a client who finally paid their balance, about a clean audit that reminded me competence is its own kind of peace. She tells me about a bride who chose dahlias over roses, how sometimes people don't know what they truly want until they see it bloom in front of them. She says relief looks like a person finally exhaling, and I know exactly what she means. We don't mention Thomas unless something requires it. Mail to forward, documents to sign. And we never talk about Ethan. That chapter is closed, sealed, and buried beneath everything we've already survived. But sometimes, in quiet moments, I catch Ava looking out across the water, and I know she's not mourning love. She's mourning the version of herself that believed in perfect stories. And that's okay. We both are. Tonight, before I sat down to record this, Ava placed a single sprig of rosemary on my desk. For remembrance, she said with a playful smirk, and roast chicken. I laughed, the easy kind that doesn't tremble anymore. Grief still knocks sometimes, uninvited but familiar. But so does laughter. So does music from the radio, and the gentle thud of keys on the hall table when someone you love walks through the door. And that, I've learned, is how healing really happens. Not in grand gestures, but in the small, ordinary moments that decide to stay after everything else has gone. If you're still here, thank you. If any part of this story sat beside you when you needed company, would you tap the like button, hit the subscribe button, and comment one below? It tells me you stayed until the end. It tells me I wasn't speaking into the dark. And if you're standing where I once stood, heart cracked, silence too loud, remember this: the ending isn't the end. It's the truth finally clearing its throat. You will rebuild, you will breathe again, and one day your own house will hum with peace, just like mine does now. I'm Renee. This was my story. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next one.